We can sit together for meditation for a few minutes. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Dear friends, we spoke yesterday about the Buddha's own awakening and his compassionate awareness of old age, sickness, and death. How beings come to sorrow and lament and grieve because of these inevitable facts, seeing that everything which is born inevitably must become corrupted and die, and how painful that is. And this was the ground that led him on his noble search, ultimately leading to the realization about dependent origination, about causation, and seeing causation as a impersonal process, not just compatible with the idea of having a permanent self. Then this morning, today we're trying to get our PhD in dukkha, so we're studying different aspects of dukkha. And this morning we considered about how quarrels and disputes both are the manifestation of this round of existence propelled by the self-conceit, and also something which powerfully fuels going on and on with this round of existence. Now, in this period, I wanted to talk to you a bit about, I call it existential anxiety, just the pain that is coming from our desire for more existence. You can notice that living beings, from their behavior, appear to have this craving for more life, for continuing their existence. Even beings that you wonder if they even have any consciousness. Like if you have some amoebas on a slide under the microscope and you put a drop of vinegar on the edge of the slide, and the amoebas all rush over in the opposite direction because they want to live. They don't want to be destroyed. And yet how much consciousness do they really have? We don't know. But we know that in ourselves, we build up a lot of ideals about developing from something that's just an instinct of moving for more life and moving, not choosing annihilation, trying to avoid annihilation, wanting to continue our life. This is true regardless of whether you have the eternalist position, if you have the idea that your eternal soul is going to later on be with Jesus in heaven, or whether you think your eternal soul is going to go on and on from life to life, experiencing the results of karma. Or if you have what I call the annihilationist position, if your underlying belief is that as an individual, as a self, as a being, you just have this one life, and at the end of this life, it's over. Even someone who has that view is still likely to sorrow and grieve and react if their life is put in danger. It's just an instinct. And it's even an instinct for more life that sort of goes beyond a narrow definition of the self. Like if you think of the self as being this physical body and the mind, which is arising from the processes of this body. And that's the self, and that's the thing that wants more life. But really, if your near relatives are destroyed in a disaster, it will be a shock, a psychological shock, because even though you didn't realize it, your immediate family was part of your concept of yourself. And so you feel like a part of yourself has been destroyed. Or even, I mentioned earlier that we have these, microbes and different kinds of parasites and other living beings that are inside of our body. And those beings all want to live. Are they, by their behavior, it's as if they want to live. And if they're destroyed, it's painful to us. I had one of our bhikkhunis who's very sensitive and has a lot of mindfulness of what's happening within the body, had a gut condition, like parasites in the gut, and was put on a special diet to deprive those parasites of their sustenance. And she said that she experienced it as if there were a Holocaust going on inside of her belly, that all of those living beings down there were going to say, oh, whoa, we're dying, we're dying, we're dying. And so it was very painful. So it was difficult to stay with the treatment, because it's like something inside was having their life cut off. And the message was coming up, to our own human mind, as if we are being cut off. Part of us is being cut off. So at that internal, like microscopic level, something which maybe it's not actually us, but it seems to be us. And then with our family, or even with our wider culture or civilization or something like that, or whatever group we identify with, if we feel that our group is being threatened, then we can feel threatened because of this individual fear of annihilation. William James, in the varieties of religious experience, said that he sympathized with others' beliefs because he thought they all reflected the universal human impulse for life. Not God, but more life is the most natural human impulse. And the God that is worshipped in the Judeo-Christian religions is the God who promises eternal life. It's the God of more life. That's one of the things that God stands for. And you can see how much effort we invest in extending our life. Look at our country under this pandemic. We're willing to make a lot of sacrifices because it seems wrong and immoral to proceed in a way that's would have resulted in a big die-off of a large percentage of our species. And so therefore we make all of this effort, all of these sacrifices in order to minimize the loss of life. People take care of their body, and they practice different kinds of medicine and different kind of regimens, and getting exercise and eating properly, or doing so many different healthy practices. Or they may, even if they're wealthy, they might investigate different kinds of like a really advanced medicine in order to extend their lifespan. And it could be that, instead of having a lifespan of 80 years or 82 years or something like that, that there might even exist the technology today that would not be so difficult to live to be 115 years or something like that. But nevertheless, regardless of how much effort we make or how much we wish and believe in more life, we experience death. So all of our effort comes to failure in the end. This is a hardship of the medical profession in the way that I don't know how it is now, but it used to be that doctors were trained that if the patient lives, that was a success. And if the patient dies, that's a failure. Now in modern times, we've come to a compassionate hospice care and end-of-life care, which doesn't have that duality. So this continuing existence is what is the craving for continuing existence, continuing becoming, is called in the Dhamma, the Buddha calls it bhava tanha, the craving for a continued becoming. And that may include craving for survival in this lifespan, and also craving to get another lifespan. So if I want to be reborn in a Buddhist country where I'll have a chance to hear the Dhamma, and I want to have a comfortable life and a comfortable family where I'll have an opportunity to practice, if that's my wish, if I'm virtuous, if I practice loving kindness, there's a chance I could get my wish, I can get my intention. Then there's another kind of craving called vibhava tanha, which is usually translated as the desire for annihilation or escaping from the round of becoming, the round of samsara. I came across a very useful, a more clear definition, which is coming from Nagarjuna. I mentioned him earlier, his Madhyamika Karika, about the middle way. That the vibhava can be considered as becoming something else. Vibhava is becoming, vi is a separation, becoming something else, translated in this case, or explained in this case, as the attainment of permanent, eternal happiness in heaven, or in a state in which there's not going to be any more rebirth, any more becoming. So becoming eternal is called vibhava. Craving for that is vibhava tanha, which is one of the three kinds of craving. And according to the Buddha, this quest is a mistake, because there is not any permanent state of existence in another form. There's no such thing. If you want to be with God in heaven forever, with an ever-changing, you can be with God in heaven, but it won't be forever. It won't be eternal. It won't be beyond a becoming. You can be in heaven with God for a long time, and then later, when that karma is exhausted, you can come back to another existence. So part of the suffering of the round is just nobody wants death, but we all get death. We all get that destruction at that part of the cycle. And then another part is this kind of like a weariness of going on and on, having to do the same thing over and over and over again. Through many a birth, I wandered in samsara. If you think of like even how much you suffered when you were a baby, you know, and you had to pee in your diapers and mommy didn't come and you had to cry for mama, and when you were uncomfortable or have a tummy ache or something like that, and then you had to cry, and you had to go through so many things. You had to go through adolescence, all the things that you had to go through in this life when you were childish and you didn't have the wisdom. Okay, so and to have to go through that over and over again. I'll read you a sutta. This is called 30 Mendicants. The Buddha said, consider this. Is the flow of blood that you have shed when your head was chopped off while roaming and transmigrating, is it more than the water in the 4 oceans or less? I say, oh, Venerable Sir, it was more. And he says, yeah, you're right. For a long time, you have been cows, and the flow of blood you've shed when your head was chopped off as a cow is more than the water in the 4 oceans. For a long time, you've been buffalo. For a long time, you've been rams, goats, deer, chickens, and pigs. And the flow of blood in each of those type of states, when your head was chopped off, is more than the water in the 4 oceans. For a long time, you've been bandits arrested for raiding villages, bandits arrested for highway robbery, criminals arrested for adultery. And the flow of blood you shed when your head was chopped off as a bandit is more than the water in the 4 oceans. And why is that? Because transmigration has no known beginning. And now we're sort of smiling and laughing because it's a sort of a funny metaphor. But the Buddha said, if you just contemplate that, this is quite enough for you to become disillusioned, dispassionate, and free regarding all the conditions. Coming back to Nagarjuna's idea of this vibhava, tanha is craving the attainment of a permanent state of existence. That is coming very closely connected to understanding what is meant by the delusion of self, the atta. The self, we know that like an individual has an ordinary personality or an ordinary commonplace kind of individuality. And so you can easily tell the difference, like if you are hungry is one thing, and if your friend is hungry, that's a very different thing. If your friend is hungry, you give them food, and if you're hungry, then you eat the food yourself. So it's very necessary to be able to make this distinction between what's inside and outside. That's just part of common, ordinary life. And the Buddha is not criticizing or saying anything about that. But then when we've evolved all this concept or this idea of a self, a soul, the inner being, the verse that we read this morning, the little yaka that we have living inside of us, that the idea of a self which is permanent and not changing, which does not die and is not born and goes on from existence to existence or is in a permanent state of existence, that kind of concept that's created by the human mind is very much affiliated with this idea of the dissolution of a present existence and the attainment of a permanent state of existence in another form. So this is where something, this discussion about existence or the permanent state of existence, something like that, it seems like a philosophical and difficult to even hang on to the meaning because it's an abstract philosophical idea. And one may question how something that's so abstract could be really useful in our quest to escape from dukkha and to obtain liberation from being in the bonds of this life. But if you imagine how natural it is for a human to think about heaven and just to think, there's a song, do I dare sing it? I'll try. I shall lay my burden down when I go home. When I go home, when I go home, my sorrows will be over when I go home. See, that's so universal and so dear and so natural to the human condition. This is it's an emotional, it's a deep emotional, natural longing that we have. But it won't, I'm sorry, it won't work. It won't work. You have to be able to go beyond that in order to create the space for a different kind of freedom. The freedom when you see that this cycle of cause and effect and going around in samsara is optional. And you don't need to cling on to any of it. So this brief talk is what I have to tell you right now. And I'm allowing a whole 15 minutes for any